computer. Okay. All righty. So today I'm going to have the pleasure of interviewing my friend Quayln Stark, whose business or designs or whatever you want to call it is QUOE. And you also have a podcast as well. But the whole idea behind your business aesthetic is change the status quo or break the status quo. And I like
Yes.
that. That makes me happy. We met, I guess, about 3 years ago at East Texas Fiber Festival when you tried to teach me, the left-handed crocheter, how to crochet cables, and I'm still working on it. But your patterns are very, very clear. It's just my downfall as a as a crocheter that I haven't gotten better at it. So what I would like for you to do is introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, but start out with telling us sort of what's your origin story into all of this creative stuff that you do. Because if people follow your Instagram, you do some amazingly creative costuming and photography and all this stuff. And so tell us about that.
Oh, thank you. I actually was born and raised in Odessa, Texas, and I've always been really into creative things. I used to hand stitch and hand sew little dolls for my sister and that kind of stuff. I never got into more fiber arts than like hand sewing. And then freshman year of high school, I moved out to East Texas area. And during that process, I had 3 months before high school started in the summer where I didn't know anybody at all. I was completely isolated and I didn't really have anything to do. So I picked up crochet and I fell in love with it immediately. And I did crochet all throughout high school. I never really considered it anything more than just like a little hobby that I do. And then freshman year of college, I started getting more involved with it. Freshman year of college, I actually found the social media side of uh, crochet and the fiber arts. And whenever I found that and really started cultivating a community, I started to grow very quickly with my craft. And it's been a whirlwind ever since. um, so freshman year of college, I was actually going for nursing, and I started reading patterns around that time, and I knew that I could probably recreate that. I could actually write my own patterns and do my own stuff. So I started doing that, and I got picked up by Red Heart to do some patterns for them. And after I got picked up by Red Heart, that gave me more steam to start submitting to other places. And I started getting picked up by magazines and other yarn companies and that sort of thing. And so I quickly, like within the span of a few months, decided to switch from going to nursing and pursuing that to doing knit and crochet full time. And so far, so good. It's been definitely an interesting year, but I really, really enjoy what
Okay, so one of the things that I really loved, and I think I even commented on this, was back in oh, when was it? Back in December on your birthday, you posted this really great post on Instagram, and you were talking a little bit about. I knew that you had some loss, last year in your family, and of course everybody had a rough year because of the pandemic, but you had some loss, and you talked about starting out this next rotation of the sun on a different foot and how you were going to stop, for lack of a better word, hiding your light under a bushel. You were going to you were going to be your authentic self, for lack of a better way of explaining it. And I really liked that, and I think that spoke to me a lot as someone, older than you, but still sometimes kind of hides myself. And I really love that post. So can you talk a little bit about sort of your evolution over kind of what you've discovered about yourself this last year while we've all had a lot of introspective time?
I do.
Because I think you definitely spoke to that in this post.
Yeah, absolutely. I was born and raised in a very conservative household. And it was mostly religion based. I grew up in a sort of cult, but I'll get into that in the future, I'm sure. Um, but I didn't grow up in the best environment for my kind of ideals and really how I am as a person. It didn't really mesh with what I was being taught in church and that kind of thing. And I've always known myself uh, since a very early age. I never in my life have hidden who I am from myself. I've always been knowledgeable of the fact that I'm like who I am. And I really slowly started to try to put that kind of stuff into like my social media. Um, at the beginning of my career and the beginning of my social media, I would do like kind of butch, like um, more masculine presenting kind of stuff. And in the back of my head, I always would think like, oh my gosh, this I could completely step everything up if I were to actually dress how I wanted to and that sort of thing. But I would always hold back a bit. And then after 2020 happened, uh, really everything got put into perspective on my end of what I was doing this for and what it would mean to other people if I were to be myself and be authentic online. And so it was definitely really scary to do. I mean, before that, I definitely think I was being authentic online. I feel it just wasn't as fancy and beautiful as it is now, but were just the visuals were not to my uh, liking. And then after I posted that very first like look that was like, wow, this is exactly what I want it to be. Um, that really opened me up to being able to post everything that I've always wanted to because I've had all of these ideas and like the outfits and everything planned for years and years and years. I've just never had the strength to actually post it. So yeah, it's been a really freeing thing. I think that it actually started when I started to sort of come out of that was whenever I did Swatch, the Swatch sweater that was all pieced together. And that was actually a year ago today or a year ago this week. So it was about a year ago whenever I started really going into everything. And then I think the tinsel look for my birthday was definitely one of the big ones. That was the first one that I did with makeup on, which wasn't like that good, but I think I've definitely improved on that. But yeah, that definitely has been a great path that I've been going on. I've been really excited about that.
I guess instead of saying, you weren't, I didn't mean to think you weren't being authentic. I think sometimes we hold back
Oh
part of
no, no, no.
ourselves, and I
Yes.
think I do that too, because of where we live, because, I live in a very conservative area, or, maybe our jobs, and this last year, I think a lot of people have just decided to, as you put it, break the status quo. You definitely, and I told you at one
Exactly.
point, you've really motivated me to re-embrace my aesthetic and my opinion of myself, I guess. So I think that's a great thing that you're getting out there and doing that, because I think it emboldens and empowers other people. Like you said, it makes other people be brave. So that's great. Um,
Yeah, that was something that I discovered really. It wasn't my intention to do that kind of thing. Um, really posting that kind of stuff was more for me than anybody, because that's exactly ever since I was little who I had imagined myself to be. And so whenever I started posting that stuff was really about helping myself out with that with my confidence and all sorts of things like that. And then after I started posting those kind of outfits consistently, I started getting messages from people and DMs like, oh my goodness, this has helped me so much, whatever. And that really has motivated me to be even more myself and show people that they can be themselves authentically too and be accepted for
okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of your designs. And I think what I'll do is I'll share the screen of your Ravelry page, if that's okay, and kind of
Of
show
course.
some of your designs, and maybe you can talk a little bit about your design aesthetic and sort of if that's evolved, or if how you seeing and having evolved over time. So this is
Yeah,
your Ravelry store right now, and you have some great patterns. So I don't know how you want to do this, but if you want to just maybe we'll start down at the bottom and go up, and you can kind of describe how you feel like your aesthetic has changed or evolved over time.
sure. I definitely, so because I do this as like a full-time job, I have two, really three ways that I approach making money with what I do. So the newest way is my sorts of outfits, and that the one-off pieces. And then the two main ways is through pattern sales myself that I publish myself, self-published patterns, and then patterns that I sell to other companies like magazines or yarn brands. So I would say for my things that I sell myself, I focus on more of like a fashion side of things. I don't really pay attention to, is this going to be the most beginner friendly pattern, or is this going to be a pattern that a lot of people are going to be interested in? I really focus on, is this pattern something that I like? Would I wear it? And is this what I would consider fashionable? So that's where I approach my personal designs from. And then for designs that I actually sell to businesses like yarn companies, I'll focus on beginner level patterns that are easy to get into, that I know will do well. Usually, if it's like a basic pattern that is easy for everyone to wear, that's what's going to do the best. And so that's what those companies look for the most. So that's what I put out for that kind of stuff. But um,
Here's a great
that
example
is,
of that right here. If you look at this line,
exactly.
this is your self-published patterns, and these are very, fashion forward, I guess, if you want to use that word, but there's a definite edge to them. And then these are the ones for like your inspirations, which are
Yes.
much more friendly. And there's nothing wrong with either, with these, but definitely I can see your hand in these, so I
Mhm.
think that that's a good example.
Yeah, for like the yarn company patterns and that kind of stuff, that really, to me, I approach it as a paycheck. That's just to get me funds coming in, because the yarn companies and that sort of thing are definitely at this moment in time paying me a lot more than my self-published patterns, because my self-published patterns are very niche. A lot of them are more involved, and a lot of it's a lot less of a market for what I do with my self-published patterns. Um, but my self-published patterns are really my bread and butter. Those are what I really love to do.
So I think this is the sweater you were talking about, right? That kind of started
Yes.
the whole thing off. So this is came out last year, you said, and this is lovely because it's free and it's to celebrate Earth Day, and it's sort of, you're
Mm,
focusing on using up stuff, right? Don't reuse
yeah.
everything, and I think that that's what caught my attention about it when you first published it. So yeah, and so you say that your patterns, your self-published patterns tend to be a little bit more advanced um, knitters and crocheters, but do you feel like they're still accessible to say to someone who I would call maybe an adventurous beginner?
Oh, absolutely. I would say that everything that I do, an adventurous knitter or adventurous beginner could do. Because whenever I'm doing these patterns, uh, whether it's like a specific technique like mosaic knitting, or intarsia knitting, or crochet cables, whenever I'm writing these patterns, I am the adventurous knitter. So I usually, whenever I'm picking up like a new technique, I'll do a pattern as I'm learning that technique. So I think that if I can write the pattern as I'm learning it, I definitely think that adventurous knitters and crocheters can tackle them too. I try to be as inclusive as I can with how easy it is. If I can make something easier, I definitely will on my patterns.
And you know, and if that's sweater is not to everyone's taste, you have other patterns that, you know, you may choose to make them in very bright yarn. Like for example, I love this, you know, and this is exactly how I'd make it. But there are other colorways that people could adapt this to maybe something
Hmm.
that was a little bit more muted color palette. So yeah, so you kind of really do have something for everybody. So the reason that I'm really glad that I'm talking to you, and we'll talk just a little bit about this month's make or May. It'll be May's make along. May was originally going to be about knits, and magic and myths, and kind of go broadly, but it still can be those things. But as I spoke to you before we started recording, um, our state legislature has passed some very hurtful and restrictive legislation, what I, in my opinion, that is going to be harmful to transgender youth. And
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
this um, this month coming up, I want to focus on one of the extra entries will be for patterns or yarns or anything that supports programs that help support transgender, specifically youth, but any transgender support program. I know that the Trevor Project is one. There are some legal funds that help people maybe who have lost their jobs or are in litigation because they have chosen to go through transition while they're in a job or something like that. But you have a pattern that I don't remember. I know it went this pattern here, and I'm not going to say the first word because I try to keep it family friendly, but you can see it. Um, right now, this pattern is free with the code. If people want this pattern to, this is a crochet pattern, and so this would be one that I think would fit the theme of the month. You want to talk just a little bit about your motivation behind this particular pattern, since it sort of fits the theme of our May make along.
Yeah, absolutely. So this pattern actually did not start off as that. This was another one of those patterns that I did for another company. I was approached by a yarn company who, this was probably back in 2018, around that time, that wanted to do a Harry Potter themed um, collection, and I have never read or watched Harry Potter. I don't know a thing about it. But it's pretty usual for designers to design projects for a fandom that they're not really a part of, because like this cowl right here, you would never know that it was supposed to be Harry Potter themed, besides maybe the colors. So I did that pattern, and they had their exclusivity period for it. And while their exclusivity period started, it was near ending, I would say. Um, a lot of stuff started coming out about the author J.K. Rowling, and how she had a lot of ideals that I did not align with. She was very, what I would consider a TERF. She was acting like a TERF, which is a trans exclusionary radical feminist, which basically is someone who is a feminist, but they don't include trans women in that. And they believe trans men, they feel like trans men are traitors to women. And her, the stuff that she was saying was really disgusting, and did not want my patterns and my brand associated with that in any way. And so I knew that whenever they were going to give me my rights back for publishing it myself, that I wanted to do something that would help me and make me feel like I'm taking that back from, and completely disassociating it from what it used to be. and I couldn't think of a better name. I think that it fits perfectly with exactly what I wanted to do, which was to show exactly where I stand on that issue. And that's where that came about.
Okay. Yeah. And I have this one. This is probably going to be my project for May because I want to make this. There are some yarn dyers out there that are, like I said, are supporting different um, transgender persons, charities or support groups or the Trevor Project, which focuses primarily on transgender youth, I believe. And I think that's really important because it makes me really upset what our state legislature has done. And so this is my little way of kind of fighting that.
Hmm.
Okay, so you don't just design though fiber arts patterns. You want to talk a little bit about that awesome feedback dress that you had on your Instagram, because that got my attention because I said, "Oh, I
Yeah.
recognize that brand."
Yeah. That, oh my goodness. So I sew as well. I do machine and hand sewing. I do pretty much any fiber craft, I'll do it. The only one that I really haven't done yet is weaving, but I'm sure that day will come. That pattern or that design as a whole has been such a crazy experience. I almost wish that I never made it. Um, I it was a great project for myself and my sister to actually do together. So my sister has a cow, and her and I both were FFA presidents, and we loved FFA in our school. And in her FFA, every year they would show cattle and that sort of thing. I did the speaking kind of side of things. But she has had a cow for 3 or 4 years now, and there was on TikTok a competition put out about designing something with feed bags, um, like a dress or just some sort of outfit. And she had shown me that, and there was like a grand prize with a buckle and money and that sort of thing. And so I was really interested in it. It started in, I think the deadline was Thanksgiving, and we had seen the post the day before, like the day before everything was due. And so we decided to enter it. She brought home a lot of feed bags, like a ton of feed bags, and I washed them all. I cut them up, and then I designed my first like dress, my first actual dress that was sewn, and it was a ball gown made of the feed bags. And I posted that on TikTok, my process of it. And yeah, it did really well on TikTok. Within the first few days, it got over 500,000 views, and the most comments that I've ever gotten on any sort of post that I've done on TikTok or anywhere else. And yeah, everybody loved it. And then a lot of stuff happened behind the scenes that wasn't so great, but the actual dress itself, I'm really proud of.
I know that it started an interesting conversation, shall we say, about the ethics of big designers versus smaller designers. And I know that you're not the only person where something like this has happened, but and I know that
Mhm.
there are. Here, I'll show this. I was trying to find it on my computer, but let me see if I can let me unpin you. Let me do this real quick because I think this is a really great image here of your sister and her cat. I love that. So
Mhm.
um, it started an interesting conversation about little designers sort of getting, or smaller, I shouldn't say, smaller designers or less well-known designers or designers with maybe a smaller following getting bulldozed over by bigger following people with larger followings. And I know that there's certain companies I know that have been pretty blatant about copying people's designs. And I know your design was pretty much, I'll say it was pretty much stolen by someone else. And
Mhm.
um, you want to speak a little bit just to sort of your feelings or experiences within the industry and how have you ever had to deal with that, and what are your feelings on like protecting smaller following designers versus these sort of megalithic following designers or companies? I'm kind of put you on the spot with
Yeah,
that
so I'll
question.
just, oh no, you're good. I'll just say like what happened with that whole thing to finish that off. So I had designed that, and then I published it on Thanksgiving, which was the due date. And then the design competition ended up extending their deadline after that to 2 weeks after. So there was even more of a like wait time for people to get their entries in. So if I had had more time, I definitely would have done something more extravagant. But with the time that I had, I'm really, really proud of what I did in that time. But about, I'd say, I think 3 or 4 days before the contest ended, I was on there on TikTok looking through the videos that had been posted. And I, up to that point, had had a great time, like talking to other people who have been doing designs, really encouraging them, that kind of thing. There's a girl that also entered the contest with me that had another amazing design that I've become friends with now. And I also uh, forgot to say I was the only and the first guy that has ever entered the competition. It's been an ongoing competition for years, and I was the only guy to enter the competition that year and the first one ever to enter it. So 3 or 4 days before the ended, I was on there and I saw a video from someone else that was almost identical to mine, even down to like the sentences that I was saying. I said some really specific wording whenever I was working on my pattern, and it was identical. And this person had 500,000 followers, and this entire page was about being a Trump supporter. And this was already after Trump had lost the election. And they were still talking about like how Trump had really won and that kind of thing, just spreading crazy propaganda. They were also someone who is admittedly homophobic, admittedly transphobic. It pretty much everything that is my antithesis, this person was. And so it really, really, really got under my skin that not only my dress been stolen and my video had been stolen because the dress had also looked identical to mine. But it was stolen by somebody who was literally like could not have been a worse person to have stolen my design. So I made a response video, just informing everyone of what had happened and made sure to keep the contest out of it. Just saying, hey, this person completely ripped off my video and stole my design. And I showed the clips side by side and they were identical. Everyone could clearly see that. And she rebutted that basically I was. So I didn't pay any mind because I knew that I had a lot of backing for my design. Everybody really loved it. The contest owner actually called me and said that they want me to come to the announcement for the winner. And that was in Dallas. So I drove 2 hours to Dallas to the winner announcement. And I was the only person in attendance that they had invited from the actual competition. And then whenever the winner was announced, it was announced that there was a winner, which was not me, which is fine. I don't care if I was gonna win or not. It was really just a fun experience for my sister and I. But they also announced that they had made a new category because there were so many great entries, and that myself and the person who copied my design had tied for that second place. And that is what really like got under my skin. So yeah, that that's what happened. Um, they knew everything that was going on, and all the people that were at that competition, the people that were actually running the competition had told me that they knew. They were like, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe that that girl stole your design," and that kind of stuff. And then they ended up tying me with her. So it was really like a slap in the face to me as a designer. Um, and I got home after I had realized what happened, and I made another response video for it, but I didn't want to dwell on that kind of negative side of things. I really try not to. Um, I like drama when it's in TV and that kind of stuff, but I try not to be a dramatic person online. Um, so instead of like just going off on the competition and that person, I decided to take that in and create something with it. And so I made a second dress that was the exact same premise. It was with blue tarps, the plastic tarps everyone's used to. And I actually made it a blueprint because my design was the blueprint for her design. So that was just a rebuttal to them. And I'm really, really proud of that outfit as well. And that was what I would have done if I had had more time with my other one. I wanted to do a full like bouquet and everything that I did with the blueprint dress, I would have done with that one if I had time. But yeah, it was just another um, time that a smaller influencer was taken advantage of by a larger influencer. And I what had hurt me the most was I thought that a the company actually had my back on it, and they had made it seem that way, and then at the last second they ended up folding. But it was definitely a learning experience. I'm definitely never going to do a competition again like that. But yeah, and that's not the first time that my designs have been um, taken. I've had a few designs um, taken for my crocheting, my knitting, by a larger company in the yarn sphere. But it was never that blatant. It was always something that I could give them the benefit of the doubt with. Um, like the yarn company, I was like, I know that you took my design, but I'd never gone public with anything until that point because I thought it was so like atrocious that this person was so despicable and they also took my design. But as for that, as a whole, if there was any other designers that were going through something similar, I would say to never stop what you're doing. There's always going to be other people who are less creative than you and less talented than you that will take your work just because they think they can. And that's not going to change, but everyone's going to know who the blueprint is, who the originator of those ideas are, and that other person's going to look uh, not as good whenever they're comparing the two, like outfits or whatever the case may be. Yours is always going to be the better one. So,
Okay, so I guess the last question I had, can you just tell me a little bit about where you get your inspiration for some of your design, for your aesthetic, your creativity? What are some sources that you draw inspiration from?
ooh, I love drawing inspiration from everywhere. Um, uh, I'm come from like the Betsy Johnson and Moschino sort of fashion. I think they get their ideas from the same place that I do. I like to draw inspiration from everyday objects, and that's really, especially with my outfits that I do, the one-off pieces. I really focus on like I get infatuated with something and then I make it into an outfit. I did my very first outfit, who is one of my favorite rappers, and I got infatuated with the idea of making a
Yeah, you
sweater
kind of
that was
broke
a
up
cat.
there. Could you say the person again? You kind of broke up for a second. Could you say the
Oh
artist
yeah,
name?
um, yeah, it was Tierra Whack, who is a rapper. She's one of my favorites. Definitely an amazing performer and artist. And she does a lot of really outlandish visuals with her like music videos and that kind of stuff. So I knew that it would be a great meshing of our creative energies. So I really got infatuated with making it like a tie beanie baby outfit, and I decided on a cat. And so yeah, that's where that one came from, was a tie beanie baby. That the heart bag is the tag of the tie, the tie tag. Um, there's a couple other designs that I'm working on right now that I can't get into too much, but that are inspired directly from little everyday objects. The blue prime dress is another example. The heart, I did a heart for Valentine's Day that was inspired by a conversation heart, the little conversation heart candy. Um, yeah, I for my outfits, I really focus on turning the everyday object into something that I would consider fashionable. And then for the my like knit and crochet designs that are not focused on like the outfits, I focus on geometry. I really like playing with straight edges and triangles. There's a lot of triangle motifs in my designs. Um, and that's where I approach the knit and crochet.
Okay, so where can, if people are looking for you on social media, you're obviously on Instagram, on Ravelry, where are some other places that they can find you?
You can find me on TikTok. I haven't done TikTok in a little bit because I've been so busy with some commissions, but I'm definitely going to get back on and do some more. That's actually where my largest platform is. I think right now it's at 43,000 followers, which is really exciting. I've had a great experience on TikTok. There's people on TikTok love what I'm doing and they're really responsive. So I love being on there. That one's just at QUOE, just my brand name. It's just at QUOE. And then my website is QUOE.us, and that's where you can find me if you want to contact
Okay, well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today, and I will stop the recording and we will finish up.